Hi, welcome back to Shape Up with Sue Daley. Today I'm going to take you through all of the paper shapes that we have in Patchwork with Busy Fingers, and often you'll hear me say that it's not just about hexagons anymore, it's about whatever shape you want it to be. And so when you're putting them together, it's just like a jigsaw puzzle. If they go together, they'll sew together. And I'm going to show you what I do as part of my design method, or how I go about designing quilts that I make. First of all, I went to the office supply shop and I bought a book that looks just like that. But instead of having white pages inside, it has black. Because our paper shapes are all white, it makes it much easier for you to see all the different shapes onto the black background. So what I do, normally it'll be something like, in the middle of the night or driving down the freeway or something like that, and I'll think of a design and I'll think, oh, I wonder if those shapes will go together. So when I get back home into my studio or over in my office, I can pull those shapes out and I quickly put them together, and if they go together, then I glue them together, I sticky tape them together, and I can put them into my book, into this book with the black pages. And then later on down the track, when I'm looking for something, like if I'm maybe designing a quilt and I'm a bit sort of lost for ideas, I can go back through this book and I can become inspired by what's in it. And I haven't forgotten about all those shapes that go together. So first, So as you can see on this page, we've used a pentagon shape which has 5 sides on it, and we've married it with a square. So we've got a 1-inch pentagon and a 1-inch square, and a pentagon and a square, and a pentagon and a square, and so on around the circle. And that will make a circle for you, and then you can use that as a frame around an applique or an embroidery or whatever you want, really. So it's created this whole circle with these little peaks. In the center of that one is just pentagons going round in a ring. And when you put pentagons in a ring, you will end up with 5 on each side, so you'll end up with 10 in the ring if it's an equal-sided pentagon. On this side, you can see I've been able to put an equilateral triangle with a half square triangle. And again, you end up with a type of a circle. It has flat edges on the inside, of course, there, but it is another frame if you want to do something on the inside of it. Maybe you do candle wicking and you might like to do that and frame it with something here. Over the page we've got some stars. So here I've used a kite shape. A kite shape is made up from a hexagon cut from flat side through to flat side in half 3 times, and you'll end up with your kite shape. So when you put them together, you've got your hexagon, and then you can just add some equilateral triangles around the outside. Over here we've got a smaller hexagon, just a full hexagon in the middle with the equilateral triangles, and then just a slightly bigger one than the small one there. And then we have over here, of course, this is an octagon now, octagons having 8 sides, and we've done the same shape on the outside, the equilateral triangle, so it's made a star with more points on it. Here I've used a pentagon, a 1 1/4 inch pentagon with a 1 1/4 inch equilateral triangle, and this one here is a smaller version of the original one that I showed you on this page, which we had the kite shape, so it's a smaller kite, and that would make up a 2-inch hexagon, and then we've put 2-inch equilateral triangles on the outside. So in all of these, you can choose to fussy cut some of these, so you're going to get a great design in the middle. You can fussy cut these outside points where you can get a nice little pattern happening in here. All sorts of things can happen if you let your mind go. On this one, this is just using half square triangles and squares. So you can see here we've got squares and then half square triangles. Again, it's like a framing border, and you can put something inside there, an applique or an embroidery. Over here I'm working with 1-inch elongated hexagons and squares, and then 2-inch squares in here to join them all together, and down here they're 2-inch elongated hexagons. And again, you can make a row of them and you can do a little embroidery in there or a little appliqued circle. You can do whatever you want. I've used this like this, and I've appliqued a circle inside, and I've used this as a border piece around the outside of a quilt. This one's interesting. We've used a parallelogram with a hexagon and 6 pointed stars. Now you could join them up as a border, so you could add another 6 pointed star in here and make this whole section again and join it on, so you'll have a border going around the outside of something. You could applique in there or embroider, or just leave it as it is. Put a nice feature fabric. You might have a nice toile fabric that you'd like to put in as a feature in behind there. This one's unusual. We've got a jewel shape which is 5-sided, so it's actually the bottom part of it is like a half a hexagon and the top half is like an equilateral triangle, and we call that a jewel shape. And I've married it with a hexagon flower petal. Because the bottom of a hexagon flower petal is a hexagon, it marries together with this because the bottom of that is a hexagon, and you put it round and you end up with something quite bizarre, really. Over here I've used the same shape that I've used, the hexagon flower petal, and married it with a square. And so it forms a ring in the middle again. This one here, it might be a little difficult for you to see, but I've used a hexagon in the middle. I've used kites and I've put them around the outside edge like a whirligig effect, and then I've been able to put a 1-inch square in. And you can use those as, just piece them up and you can applique them onto a block. And it depends on how you use your fabric as to what that will look. You know, 10 people could make that same block and every one would be very, very different. Just little motifs and things. This is a little basket using a 2-inch Dresden, a pointed Dresden, with a half circle to create a basket. Now you could add a handle to that if you wanted to, and you could applique that onto some blocks and make a cute little basket quilt. This is just using your elongated hexagons and squares, and you could make a border with that as well, or you can just use them as little medallions or motifs to sew on around the outside of a border. This design here is just working with a hexagon, and these are half hexagons and then sewn around the outside. This looks excellent if you fussy cut these outside half hexagons with something in here, and you can make like a scallop shape that's going to come around it. The design will be really pretty around the outside of the hexagon. Another basket, just squares, half square triangles. Again, you could applique a handle on there, or you can just leave it as it is. It's a very traditional design. Over here I've got a little bit creative. I worked with 2 different size kite shapes and a leaf shape and made a butterfly. So if you work with your fabric, you can make that very effective looking butterfly there. These jewel shapes here, if we used those on a design on the page before, and this time I've used them with the points coming into the middle and that bottom hexagon shape coming around the outside. This one here is using the hexagon flower petal again, but this time I've put a 6-pointed star in, and I've used that particular design on a quilt of mine called Antique Sampler as one of the little sampler blocks in it. I've added hexagon flower petals around a pentagon so that our leaves our petals don't actually join up here, so there's a gap in between them. So it doesn't matter that they actually don't all join up exactly, it just creates a different type of design. You've just got to be a little bit creative. This is our pie or our tart shape, so it's 8 segments into the circle. They look like little slices of pie, and for a lot of you, you would remember the pie and tart quilt where we had the bigger pies and the little tarts, and it's just a beautiful quilt. This design here is working with 1-inch elongated hexagons and squares. Now I've just finished making a quilt with this, and I've used it on the cross sections, like when 4 blocks come together where they intersect, and I've used that and I've appliqued it over that section, and you'll see that soon. We'll be releasing that in the next couple of weeks, so you will see that actually on a quilt that I've just finished, and it's called Wagon Wheels. Some more little motifs, little fun things. This is a half a pie or a half a tart. You can turn that into an umbrella if you'd like to put a handle on it. Little stars, hexagon flower petals like the Grandma's Flower Garden, and this looks a bit like a ice cream cone gone mad, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's whatever you want it to be. Over here we've got Dresden plate shapes. So these are our 4-inch rounded Dresdens, and this is the little tumbler block that we used in It Takes Two. So there's 16 pieces around, and so what it looks like here, and what it really is this particular shape, this Dresden shape with the top cut off, is this section in here. So if you put them together you get something completely different. So as you can see, there's heaps of things you can make. It is just like a jigsaw. Whatever you want it to be, it will be. You can just play with all of the different shapes, put them together, and as I said, if they go together, they'll sew together. And it's really up to you. You don't have to be like everybody else. You don't have to just make hexagons. You can make whatever you want. So, you know, I hope that's, you know, planted a few seeds in your mind, and I've given you a little bit of inspiration today. So I hope that you go into your studio and get your papers out and have a little play around. And remember, all of our papers have an accompanying template that you can use for rotary cutting your fabric, and we have over 115 different shapes and sizes in the range, so there's plenty for you to play with. Well, that wraps us up for today. What I want to say is that next week I'm hoping to have a special guest to have a chat with you and in the studio, and we're going to run through one of the quilts that we did recently as a collaborative idea, and we're going to just talk to you about how we did that. And so welcome back. No, not welcome back.
Thanks for watching.
Okay, so so thanks for watching Shape Up with Sue Daley, and I'll see you next week.